to the next presentation, which is from John Nolan. John's the Regional Pest and Animal Emergency Management Coordinator with Murray Local Land Services in New South Wales. John's been working to engage landholders and community for on-ground feral pig programs for quite a while, and he's looking for long-term impact. So, John, over to you.
Thank you very much, John. And I'd just like to thank the channel for inviting me along today. It's really good to be here, so thanks. And also our feral pig biosecurity team, Zach, Chris, Stuart, Michael and Darren down here in Murray for all their work they've done on the ground to support these programs. We've also had a lot of support from Beck Gray, and she's the New South Wales Feral Pig Coordinator, so thanks, Beck. Obviously, a lot of time and effort from private landholders, public land managers, community groups and Indigenous groups have helped us along the way. So thank you for all those people that have been involved. Next slide, please. I'd just like to give you a bit of background about our Murray region. So I'm obviously with Local Land Services. The Murray region, just putting it into a bit of a picture for you, extends right up from the Alpine regions, Mount Kosciuszko up around there, and the National Park, right west along the Murray River through the big red gum forests and some of the Ramsar wetlands along the Murray River, which borders Victoria, right out past Swan Hill towards Goodnight into the Mallee country, up around Balranald, which is the lower Murrumbidgee and lower Lachlan floodplains, and then back through a lot of wheat and mixed farming country, back up into the mountains. So as you can see by that, we have a really diverse range, geographic range, and also agricultural and horticultural industries. It's quite mixed throughout our region. And obviously the feral pig problems, they're always the same, but we're dealing with different impacts throughout our region. The map on the left just shows some of the distribution through New South Wales. So down in our region, which is to the south, we've got quite a gap in the middle where we don't usually have feral pigs, but in the east and the west, the numbers get higher depending on the terrain and the habitat. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk about engaging landholders, engaging community, getting a feral pig program up and running and continuing that program. And for us, the best way, and as most of you here today would understand, is a coordinated approach. Coordinated control is really important. Working in isolation, as we know, doesn't work. So for us on the ground, the people doing the groundwork, it's critical that we engage a whole community. And not only that, by doing that, we're engaging lots of people, but we're also controlling lots of feral pigs. And I'll demonstrate that now. Next slide, please. So when we start off, you always have to have a starting point. You'll have a landholder out somewhere and says, look, I've got a serious feral pig problem. Let's get going. So that's our starting point. So that's fantastic. You have to have a starting point somewhere. But from that, you need to grow it. And the map on the right there shows, you know, we're going from one landholder to 5 or 6, and we're getting that, starting to get that momentum going, starting to get that upswell, starting to get neighbours talking to each other and saying, look, Joe Blow or Sally down the road, she's doing a pig program, let's jump on board. That's fantastic. And that's where our biosecurity staff jump in and say, look, we can help you, we can support you. How can we make this bigger and better? Next slide, please. So to remove that Swiss cheese effect, as we call it, gaps in the environment, we're all aiming for this. If we can get this, we've got a really good program, coordinated landscape going over a broad area. We remove the gaps, we block all the natural corridors, the movements over the long term, and that prevents seasonal migration, it prevents further breeding, dispersal, and probably most importantly, and this is where I'm coming from, it's the human aspect. While we're all trying to reduce pig numbers and reduce impacts, the big win out of this is getting landholders and community to be involved in a joint project. And by looking at that map now, you've got a whole region which is all involved. You don't have gaps. You've got a community coming together with a shared problem and a shared responsibility. And they're getting help and assistance from for us from local land service to achieve really good results. So for us, that is the best case scenario, and that's what we strive for. Next slide, please. So when we talk to landholders, when we get that big picture, when we get that coordinated approach, there's obviously a lot going on in the background to achieve that. And one of those are the tools on offer. It's no good going to an Indigenous group, a community group, a land care group, 5 or 6 farmers, without having technical expertise and without having some of your tools in the toolbox that'll do the job. So when we go and talk to landholders, we don't limit ourselves. We always keep a very open mind, and we put what works best for them. So in this situation, one of our biosecurity guys, Zach, went down to a landholder that had an issue, and they just start putting a bit of grain on the ground. Just throw the grain out there on a camera. Simple things are usually the best. And by demonstrating feral pigs, by demonstrating there is a problem, that builds trust. And I'll talk about that in a minute. Next slide, please. So, you know, all your tools could be the old manual traps. Some landholders still like to use these, and that's great. You're not trying to change people. We're not trying to come up with new innovations all the time, although it's great to have them. If you've got someone that's enthusiastic and keen to do some work, let them keep doing whatever they're doing, but build that trust. Keep going out there and you know, encouraging. But from that may lead to something else down the track once you develop a rapport. Next slide, please. Things like hog mats are really effective. Just a sheet of rubber on the ground with 2 steel posts and a bit of grain in a hole underneath. A camera's fitted there. It reduces a lot of non-targets from the area, but again, very simple. But it's getting these different tools out onto a property or out into a wetland or out into a community group, having the options and having the technical expertise to back what you're doing is really important. Next slide, please. When we started this program, this kicked off in Murray. The coordinated approach kicked off about 5 years ago. Before that, we were going out to properties. It was a one-on-one, pretty well working in isolation with landholders. Then we went back and had a good think about this, and we looked at the whole region. We looked at the whole river system, the whole landscape. We got some maps out and we said, why don't we join the dots, and why don't we go in and offer something to these landholders where we can get a bit of buy-in and get a bit of trust. So the way we started this, it was obviously very low cost, very low impact, and very time effective. 4 steel posts, a bit of ring lock. That area there on that map's about 5 metres by 5 metres with a little Reconyx camera in the corner taking photos. We whacked grain in the middle, and you can look at that. You can see lots of sign coming through there. If you're looking for pig sign or game trails, you can see that going through that lignum. Perfect spot. Put the camera there, and we set up about 20 of these over probably 10 or 12 different properties over about a 30-kilometre run across different watercourses. Joined all the properties together, and this is how we started this big coordinated program. We started gathering data, we did the monitoring, we got the evidence, and most of you would know the story. You know, what was 10 or 20 pigs that was reported became 100 or 200 pigs. And that's a common story. You'll often hear people say, oh, we thought we only had a dozen pigs. Put some cameras up, free feed for about 3 weeks, and the story starts to change. It grows and grows. So once the biosecurity team went out and started delivering these on the ground and getting the evidence, the most important thing that came out of this was the trust. It was trusting people to come onto a property and work in partnership with the landholder. That's the big one. It's the trust. They're going to shut the gate. they're not going to bring anything onto their property that they shouldn't. They're going to clean up after them. They're going to respect the land that they're on. Gaining that trust, developed this program. It wasn't just about the pigs. It's about people trusting someone for an agency or someone else coming along to come onto their place and help them do that work. That was the big part of this, and that's how we kicked it off. Next slide, please. One of our very foundation landholders in one of our big programs is a very clever landholder. Most landholders are very practical and very clever. They know how to improvise and they know how to make things work. A lot of our ideas come from people doing the work on the ground. From that little bait stations that we developed in the last slide grew to a permanent, or these permanent bait stations that we've now put up. They're about 20 metres by 20 metres in size. They have end assemblies that are fixed. You can see there, they're railway iron. They have steel posts and hinge joint with a barb on top. This landholder was very clever. He just put in 2 steel posts. You can see halfway along. So instead of tying the hinge off, it was able to allow the hinge to slide up and down. So the pigs, as you know, will push under. They go under, and the grain is over under that tree in the middle with a camera. It excludes all the non-targets, sheep, cattle, anything else from going in there. The pigs learn really quickly where the food is. Fantastic. The win-win from this is a permanent base station becomes a permanent part of their management plan. Because it's permanent, the pig enclosure becomes part of their annual management plan. So they're not just looking at sheep and cattle, they're looking at their pests now. It's there, they drive past it. Okay, we're coming up to summer. Let's kick off our pig program again. Let's ring LLS and get those guys involved because we trust them. We like them. They're nice people. Let's get going. And that's how this one's developed. Really good. Next slide, please. Talking about innovation, and Annalise said this before, and she's done wonderful things in Greater Sydney. I heard her, and I've met Annalise. She's fantastic at what she does. Same thing, we've implemented some of these 4G drop-down gates that can be triggered remotely from your kitchen while you're having your cup of coffee. You'll get the images come through of your pigs. That's an automatic feeder that we've got sitting above that can be used for deer, can be used for anything. Some of them are actually used on fish farms. This one's been developed by our biosecurity team to feed the pigs, I think, about 6 times a day. This actual bait station was placed in a perfect spot, only about 5 kilometres from a village. Same thing, we thought there was 20, 30 pigs in the area. To date, we've controlled over 200 pigs in this one trap. Highly effective. It's in a corridor of known pig migrations. We know that now. So we're having really good success in getting pigs. So really good with that one, using that innovation. Next slide, please. Our biosecurity team have hybridised and developed and adapted. They call this the 44 Magnum. It's a 44-gallon drum with a feeder sticking below. Same thing as the one before, but this one's been developed by our own Zach, Chris and Michael in our shed. They've developed a few of these. It has a lid on the top so it keeps the rain off the grain. You can see they've been free feeding there and they've actually put piles of grain out ready for poisoning. Really effective. Good to be adaptable to the circumstances you're working in. Next slide, please. Other things we use are things called pig baiters. Some of you would be familiar with pig baiters. They come in 2 sizes, 100 kilo, 250 kilos. Excellent way of applying grain to feral pigs. You can put them there. They're permanent if you like, or you can move them to new locations. We're having lots of success with these. So once again, a really good tool to get a coordinated program where not one thing fits. You can be flexible, versatile, talk to your landholders, talk to your community groups, and all these tools will have a place somewhere. Next slide, please. Narelle. So as I spoke to you, we started our coordinated feral pig program about 5 years ago. We made it coordinated. We started to get rid of that Swiss cheese effect and get rid of the gaps. And as you can look at that, our numbers have grown lots and lots. So for the first 4 years, we were tracking at about an average of about 250 pigs per year controlled. And I know it's not always good to look at control. You've got to look at impacts. But the last 12 months, we've had a lot of support from the New South Wales Feral Pig Program, Beck Gray, and obviously Heather's been up to visit us at one of our field days, which is fantastic. But our numbers have had a huge jump. And that's because we're getting a coordinated approach. We're collecting data. We're getting resources on the ground. And landholders are now reporting to us what they're doing. And this is really encouraging because this is painting the big picture and getting the data, the raw data back to us. So a big jump in control and monitoring numbers, which then helps us secure funding and assist landholders. Our program area has gone from 5 permanent landholders to 35 and over 200,000 hectares we've now got in our footprint for coordinated control. Next slide, please. So why are we having successes with landholders, community and stakeholders? Well, next slide, please. I think the secret to that, and I'm confident the secret to that, knowing what our guys do here, our guys and girls, is developing partnerships and trust. That's absolutely essential. That's a starting point. With or without the pigs, that has to be done. Keep messaging simple. A simple message is so good. We don't want to get caught up in all the jargon, too much detail. Keep it simple and practical. When we develop local champions, the local champions will come to us. They're people that are passionate about pig control. I'll start using some of the technologies that we're getting out on the ground. They'll love it. They'll enjoy it. We work hand in hand. Use your local champions on the ground to come out and sell your message because they're the ones that are going to be passionate. They're the ones using it, and they're the best endorsement for your program. Trust is also very, very, very important. Some of our main clear message is free feeding. If we're selling a message to a landholder, all we go on about is free feed, free feed, free feed. That's our simple message. And when you're doing a baiting program or even a trapping program, free feed for 3 weeks, and that's going to give you good results. And that's such a true message. Next slide, please. We had we love our field days, as Annalise spoke about before. Field days are great. Share your knowledge, bring your groups together and seek feedback. That's probably the most important thing. Seek the feedback. Don't be shy from getting feedback from people in the group. A lot of our best ideas come from landholders that are doing the work. Be prepared to adapt and adjust based on feedback because it's that type of work that is, that type of advice that is so important and helps possibly change the course of your program and helps get the results. And finally, next slide, please. Celebrate your successes. As you know, barbecues are great. Promote the good work and always maintain open communications. Don't walk away. One of the big mistakes, I've done it myself with programs in the past, is think they're okay, think they're right, think they're they've got it all under control. Always be there, always maintain communication, and always go back to them. And a quick phone call, a quick site visit goes a long way. So we've found that helps keep our coordinated programs going. And that's about it. I'll just again, thank you, Heather, for inviting me along today, and John. Heather has been up to visit us at Wanganella at one of our field days, and it was such a good thing to have Heather there sharing our ideas. So thank you very much. Thanks, John.
Thanks very much, John. That's a really significant increase in landholder participation through effective engagement. We've got a couple of questions that have come through. I've noted those here, and we'll come back to those after our next presentation.